All right, so this one we're going to pick up right where we left off with these get points algorithm using question filter and the Q lookups. So the first thing I want to do is actually fix the very first two lines in here and put it into being the actual arguments that are being passed versus the shell definition that we set prior, which was A and B. So anyway, so now that we've got these users, we can come through here and kind of see what it is that we're going to be doing. I'm also going to change this to being just A and B, just to make it a little bit cleaner and easier for us to look at. So if A and B, we're working through this. So the first thing that I'll actually check is I want to make sure that the question ID is the same. Now it should be the same because these two are coming through, but we could do the redundant test just like what we did below of if A.question.id is equal to B.question.id. That's a little bit of a redundant test because of what's going on here. But you could do it to just double check to make sure that these questions are actually coming through and are coming through properly, but I'm going to leave it off. So the first thing with this iteration, I want to double check and say questions answered or questions in common. So let's leave it as in common, being 0 to start out. And then if these come through and this is true, then we'll say questions in common dot plus equals to 1. So in each iteration is going to do that. And then we want to check their answers. So first off, if A dot their answer, so the preference answer, right? So if A dot their answer is equal to B dot my answer, so A's preference is equal to B's answer, then we're going to have to add some data here. So we'll say A points equals to B points equals to A total points equals to and B total points equals to. And all of these we're going to set to 0 to start off. All right. So if their answer is, if A's answer or A's preferred answer is equal to B's answer, then we award B the points. So B points plus equals to A dot their points. Right. So we're awarding B those points, and then after that we can just say B total points is equal to A dot their points, or adding A's points as well. And then we want to have another if statement here, because we're actually going to be doing both of the users in this, because we're iterating through, we might as well do both, versus what we did before, it was a little bit more complicated or a little bit not as clear to do both at the same time. So now we just change it to be their answer equals to A my answer, then we do A points plus equal to A or B their points, and then A total points plus equals to B their points. All right, so now we've got our points and total points assigned on each question that's being looped through here. So let's think about this, for example, for a second, is we've got a question. So I'm saying if A's preferred answer is equal to B's actual answer, then we award B the points because B got it right, basically. So this is their preference answer, and B got it right. And that's true with the one below. And if they get it wrong or right, no matter what, we want to add those points, the total points together, so we have a working total for those points. And now, after this for loop is done, we're going to check if the questions in common are greater than 0. And if they are greater than 0, then we're going to actually run some actual values here. So the first off will be A decimal equals to A points divided by A points possible, and then B decimal is the same thing, equals to B points divided by B points possible, or excuse me, not points possible, but total points. Okay, so those gives us the decimals for this. And of course, I'm going to convert this into a decimal, and just to make sure that it comes out as a decimal value on the other end. So if it's an even number that might round it, and we don't want it to be rounded at this point, or if ever. So now that we've got this, we have our A decimal and B decimal. We can actually create our match percentage. So match percent equals to the decimal value of A decimal. So again, I'm just double checking to make sure this is the case, times by the decimal value of B decimal. And I'm going to put these in parentheses and take it to the nth power. So the nth power in this case is going to be 1 divided by the value or the number of questions that they have in common. So questions in common. So of course 1 divided by the number of questions common is to the nth root of the questions, so the number of questions that are there. So that's giving us that match, that final match percentage, and then we will return the match percentage as well as the questions in common. All right, so this is actually giving us back that whole deal, and then otherwise we'll return 0.0 for the match percentage and 0 questions in common. So one way or another, it's going to be returning 2 numbers here. So another thing that we might want to check is if these numbers are 0. So I'll say if A decimal is equal to 0, I'll put A decimal equaling to 0.001 like we did below, and then I'll also say if B decimal is equal to 0, I'll do the same thing, equals to 0.011. All right, so that's again to make sure that this is being calculated in some form or fashion, even if the percentage that comes back is very, very small. All right, cool. So now we need to actually test this. So let's go jump into the shell. So Python manage.py shell. And I'm going to go ahead and import all of these here. And then I need to get the user model. So I'll also need to import from .models, or excuse me, from matches .models import match. And I'll say m equals to match.objects.all, and we'll get that first one. So we can actually get the match percentage there, and then a is equal to m.user a, and b is equal to m.user b, a and b, and then the match, again 0% there. And then let's go ahead and copy this whole thing in here. Get points to, paste this in. We got an indent error, and that's because of just how we had it formatted in Sublime Text. Copy that over, paste it in, there we go. And now we do get points to of A and B. And we got a little bit of an error here. Int and answer. So let's see why. So int and answer, so we've got an integer number coming through that's incorrect. And it's fairly easy, it's this one right here. So total points is being added to their answer, which is an answer object, not their points, and that's what we needed. So let's go ahead and copy this again. And the way you'd be able to find that is by going to line 23, so line 1, 2, and then counting all the way down to 23, which would have brought you to this line here. And then you would have seen that was incorrect. All right, so let's go ahead and copy this. Paste it in again, so get points to A and B. And it's returning back a decimal value of 1. So that's the incorrect number. So let's go ahead and take a look at why. So questions in common, let's actually look at the decimals that are coming back. So B decimal and A decimal. Let's print those, and actually right underneath it I'll just do get points to of A and B. Okay, so we copy this whole thing, and 0, 0. So it's rounding it to 1. So this probably has to do with this call right here, or it definitely has to do with that, because we're not getting the actual answer. Because questions in common might be giving us a different number than we want. It's giving us 2. So the problem is right here, because 1 divided by 2 is 1/2, but it automatically is going to round it to 1, so it's rounding it up, which makes it nearly 0 to the power of 1, which of course is 1. And then it's rounded and all this stuff, so let's actually bring it back in with that being decimal, just like what we did before, so this is not anything new really. and now we've got it to the negative exponent, so that's perfect. That's exactly what we want to see. So now this get points to is actually going to take place of our get match. So we can just call this get match, and then go down here, and we'll comment this out. So now that we've got this, let's go ahead and exit out of the shell and do the shell again. So we'll do from matches.models, import match, and match m equals to match.objects.all, and the first item there, if we go to m, it's that, and then a equals to m.user, a, b equals to m.user b. We've got a and b here. So now I'm going to delete that first match, so delete, and then we'll do match.objects.get or create match, and we'll use a and b, and it creates it, and it does exactly as we expect. And if I change the order, b or a, it still creates it and it says it's, or it doesn't create it, it gets it and it says it's already updated. Cool. So now this algorithm works really well, and this is the one we're going to be working off of. Of course, there are little things that you might need to change or update down the line, but as far as how this works, it's going to be really good for us because now we're just iterating through this one list, and we're doing it all in one go instead of iterating through it twice and then going through it again twice, right? So down here. So that was grossly inefficient, but the important part there was to show you how you would intuitively start to do it before you knew of something like Q contains, and also how that works, or the Q lookup. So now I'm just going to delete everything else, all this other code, because we don't need it anymore. Of course, if you needed to see this code ever, you could go back into the commit history on GitHub to see what that old code was if you ever need to reference it. All right, so if you have any questions on the final version of this algorithm, let us know. Otherwise, let's keep going.